Hello and welcome. Today is Wednesday, September the 10th, 2014. This is Paul Sandhu coming to you with an economic news update. This is a report out of Zero Hedge about these tit-for-tat sanctions that are now taking place between the US, EU, and Russia. So US, UK, EU on the one side, and Russia on the other. And this is all about what has been happening in Ukraine. Just a little reminder that this problem in Ukraine, which goes, I think, began back in February or somewhere around there, it was originally instigated by the US, which spent $5 billion destabilizing the democratically elected government of the Ukraine. No matter if they were corrupt or not, they were elected by the people, and they were overthrown. Some puppets were installed. And then, of course, that led to the annexation or the separation of Crimea from Ukraine to go to Russia, which was done by a referendum, not via an invasion. Okay, so that's what happened. And then the Western press, of course, started reporting the story that, the big bad Russians have invaded Ukraine, and therefore we need to impose sanctions on them. Okay, so this is where this whole thing started. So in the beginning, they had some sanctions which the Russians laughed at because they were really toothless. And then they did some more, and the Russians laughed some more because they were, again, they had no bite. And then they did some more, and the Russians laughed even harder. But finally, over the last week or so, these reports were leaked out that the EU had a meeting, NATO met, etc. They had some meetings, and they decided that, okay, they're going to really get serious about these sanctions, and they're going to start sanctioning. Russia's economy is mainly dependent upon its energy, upon its energy exports, mostly to Europe. Now they're, of course, building up a market with China, but that is still in the works. It is not yet quite fully active. So Russia gets most of its foreign income from European gas and oil sales. Okay, so what the EU has indicated, led by the US, that they are going to sanction Russian oil companies. They're not yet sanctioning Gazprom, which is the big Russian gas company, but they are going to sanction these Russian oil companies. So when this announcement was made, or this report was leaked out, it has not yet been done, by the way. Okay, it is not that the sanctions have actually been imposed, they're just being talked about. But Russia is not waiting around for them to actually become reality, so Russia is now hitting back. The only problem that I see here, the big problem I might add, is that we have seen some currency wars that have been going on between the US dollar and the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan, as the dollar is being replaced all over the world by trade agreements that bypass it. Okay, so these currency wars are becoming trade wars, and they're becoming economic wars. And usually history teaches us that these type of wars, they lead to shooting wars. Okay, I am yet not fully convinced that this will actually become a shooting war. But if it does, this is the biggest war that the world will ever have seen, because it involves the biggest players in the world. This is not somebody like Iraq or Vietnam or Korea or even Iran. These are the biggest superpowers in the world, aligned on one side, led by Russia, with China and some of the other, like India, etc., in their fold. And then on the other side, of course, is the US and NATO. So if this war does materialize, then it would be World War III. Now, I am not convinced that we are there yet, okay, but these signs are not good. The way these things are progressing, it is not good. Okay, what is being done here is that the Europeans are being put in a very, very tough situation by the US and by their own leaders, because they cannot survive a winter I'm telling you, like, I mean, if these Russian sanctions really go through and they really cut off gas supplies to Europe, Angela Merkel and all these Western leaders in their country, they are going to be thrown out by the people. That's the only choice they'll have. And they are going to completely isolate one nation. And that nation is not going to be Russia, it is going to be the US, because all the people inside Germany and the other countries, they realize that these insane policies are being inflicted upon them, imposed upon them by the US, and therefore they are in turn going to retaliate against the United States and isolate it. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the actual game plan, to bring down the US economy by isolating it in its currency usage, by limiting current people around the world that use the dollar as a reserve currency, by reducing the number of nations that use the dollar for petroleum purchases, so the petrodollar, by killing that, and then by destroying trade with some of their biggest trading partners in Europe. Okay, so these things, I don't see they bode well for the US. So why are these insane policies then being pursued so actively? I don't know. Maybe the US economy is in reality on verge of a major collapse. And these things that have been done by QE, by the Fed, etc. Maybe the Fed and the powers that be realize that whatever smoke and mirrors illusions they have created over the past 5 years to tell us that everything is hunky-dory and the economy is in a big recovery, that the very opposite may be true, that it may be on the verge of a precipice and that it's ready to go over. And therefore, to hide their own crimes, they are now going to launch the world into the biggest war that it has ever known. It's a possibility that is how this is playing out, and that is why they're imposing these insane sanctions, which they know are not in the final analysis going to hurt Russia as much. It will hurt Russia, no doubt, but not nearly as much as it will hurt their own allies in Europe. So what is this story in Zero Hedge? It says Russian retaliation begins, Gazprom limiting EU gas, cuts Poland supplies by 24% in past 2 days. See, all these shenanigans and these games that are played, every side plays the game. Okay, Russia cut off supplies to Ukraine, gas supplies to Ukraine, because apparently Ukraine wasn't paying its gas bills, okay? Which is fair, like in your house, if you don't pay your gas bill or your electric bill, they are going to cut it off. That's just the way it goes. So that's what happened. But these Europeans and the US, I guess they were stealthily still supporting Ukraine by having gas that was being delivered by Russia into other countries such as Poland. Okay, so Russia was supplying gas into Poland, and Poland in turn would do is that they would reverse the supply. Okay, it would send it right back into Ukraine. So therefore, Ukraine still had gas to keep operational. But now, Russia, of course, knows all this is going on, and now what they have done is they are really hitting Ukraine and the Europeans where it hurts, because it has cut Poland gas supplies by a quarter, 24%. That is huge. So what has Poland done in turn? Well, Poland did the only thing that it could do, is that it is not going to shoot itself in the foot, so it shot the Ukrainians. So it's cut off gas supplies to Ukraine, so there's no more reverse flow going back into the Ukraine. So the first and foremost, the very first victim of these trade economic insane wars is going to be Ukraine. Not only is it in the throes of a civil war that was fully documentedly initiated by the U.S., okay, by the CIA, by destabilization of the elected government. They started it, this whole thing, okay, and so that's going on inside the country, that they are having this war, and on top of that, now they are going to have to deal with a greatly reduced or completely cut off gas supply, even as the winter season is fast approaching. So these are the things that are happening. And before I close off here, you can read this article. It'll be in the link. It's a good article. But this is something that is very telling. It is like, okay, so these Europeans, they're going to impose sanctions on Russia. Okay, we're going to impose your energy companies, which means we're not going to buy energy from you guys, you big bad Russians. But who's in the driver's seat? Look at this here. Look at this map. This is a map that shows how much of the European energy, whether it's their oil or their gas, comes from Russia. Okay, Finland, 100%. The Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, 100%. Poland, 79.8%. Netherlands, 11.2%. Germany, 35.7%. Austria, 71%. Slovenia, 45.2%, Italy, 28.1%, France, 15.6%, Greece, 59.5%, Bulgaria, 100%, Romania, 86.1%, Hungary, 43.7%, Slovakia, 99.5%, and the Czech Republic, 100%. So you mean to tell me that all these countries, with the winter fast approaching, they are going to freeze their own citizens to death? No, I don't think so. I think there's going to be a big, big blowback. There's going to be a big push. And these things that these leaders are doing, they might result in all these leaders being kicked out of office, like Angela Merkel. If they follow through with their threat, it is just a threat at this moment to impose sanctions against the Russian energy companies. If they actually follow through with it, you can bet your bottom dollar as the people start to freeze, they are going to kick them out of office and they're going to bring in people who are going to be pro-Russia. So in this, the winner is going to be Russia. It is not going to be the EU or the US. Okay? The one that will become isolated is not going to be Russia because they've already signed all kinds of deals and agreements with China, who was secretly or at least covertly supporting them, both financially and monetarily. I'm sure they're getting support from China so that they are going to get through this. They made it through their big currency crisis back in the late 90s, and I'm sure they're much stronger and in a better position right now. They're going to make it through this year. So the one nation that is going to be most isolated is going to be the U.S. because the Europeans are going to turn around and say, hey, U.S., we are not going to listen to you anymore. You are hurting us, and we don't want to deal with you. We would rather deal with the Russians. This is quite the reverse from things as they were 60 or 50 years ago, or even 30 or 20 years ago, where even the thought of Western Europe, like Germany and France and these other nations turning to Russia instead of the U.S. would have been unthinkable. But it seems that the policies that the U.S. itself has followed in the last few years are causing these Europeans to go and embrace the big Russian bear. Thank you for listening. This is Paul Sandhu.
Back again, I'm glad to see. Got another chance to be forgiven and freed from sin. But you say no, I'll wait a while, and that just makes the devil smile, 'cause he knows that's all he needs to win. He knows that he can seal your fate if he can make you hesitate. If you could take a trip to hell, you'd see how this has worked so well on others. People just like you who thought that they had time, and they'd soon make up their mind to repent. their chance came and went. Tomorrow is Satan's fate, he only wants to make you wait. Now's the accepted time, the Holy Spirit cries. Emotions making you delay are only Satan's lies. There's never been any less time before Christ is knocking at the door. Unlatch the bolt, let him come inside and throw away your foolish pride. You just can't lose. What if you choose to say perhaps some other day will you just push the Lord away and be your friend? He'll burn you in the end. Two voices calling out to you, but which one are you listening to? If you would only take a glance, you'd see this might be your last chance.